Welcome, Richard, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about the band, about this new album, and more things related to the metal world. Obviously, you present your next gig here in Latin America. So, we'll start with a common question. You released Virus in 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, and now, 3 years later, you are presenting Fauna. So far, how is the reception of this album going over the world from the Fauna and the Virus and the promoting?
Yeah, so Fauna is a very different album, I'd say, from our last two, Virus and Vector. They felt like they were a lot more focused towards a more metallic metal sound, whereas Fauna feels a lot more free and liberal in the approach we took. We really didn't have any boundaries when it came to writing the music, and we almost adopted a kind of like no filter approach to the writing process, which kind of meant the music had a lot looser feel to it, which naturally made the music a lot more eclectic, which is always a risk, because when you've got such a variety of music on one album, you never know how it's going to be received by the fans. But thankfully, it's being received very warmly. And since we've taken it out on tour, the new songs have gone down extremely well. And we've had so much fun with it. So we can't wait to carry on that.
Okay, talking a little more about this new album, and according to Ross' words, initially the song's title had an animal name, but then you decide to change to actual names of the song. So why does the band decide to change it in the first time? Because the animal names is more easily to relate as a concept album for a title like Fauna. So even this new album would be your first album concept.
Yeah, so the way it worked was that we had this overarching idea or theme of Fauna, the animal kingdom, quite early in the process. So we knew it was going to be loosely based around that. And we wanted to leave it fairly open to allow the music to go in any possible direction. But like midway through the process of writing the actual music, we started to kind of lock down some other thematic ideas. And I think the way we thought it would be best to approach it is to use various species or specific animals as like a metaphor for things that are happening in the everyday world, or things that are personal to us. So I guess it was during that process we felt it would make more sense to potentially give the songs titles that actually relate to the topic that the animal was a metaphor for, if that makes any sense. As an example, the final song on the album, I wrote the lyrics for that one, and it's The Eyes of Ebony.
Yeah.
I used that because it was about the passing of my father, and he passed away during the writing process of the album. So I thought it'd be nice to kind of dedicate this song to my father, and I used the plight of the white rhino as a metaphor for that. But rather than call the song White Rhino, I thought it'd be nicer to call it something that actually related to the grief that I was going through at that time. So that's an example. And then all the other songs have different themes, and they aren't specifically about the animals. It's we're using the animal as a symbol for what the song is about. So we thought it would make more sense to actually give the song a title that relates to what it's actually about.
Okay. So, with your words about this aspect of the lyrics, you said that each animal in the lyrics is representing the personality of Haken musicians. So, what animals will be identified according to the character of each musician in this new album, and why?
Well, I don't think that's not how we approached it, really. But it's the animals are more metaphors for the topics we talk about in the songs. So yeah, I wouldn't say we each have a spirit animal that's aligned to each of us. But if I had to pick an animal for myself, I wouldn't mind being a bird, so I could fly around, travel the world freely. That'd be quite fun. But it's hard really to associate any of us with actual particular animals. Yeah, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky question, but I'd love to be a bird if I could.
Okay. Being a concept album is a normal for us who haven't been listening to metal and progressive rock for years, since the 80s, or the 70s, even up to now. So, because this concept is familiar for us, because you have to listen to whole album, and to understand the concept behind these concept albums. But the new generations are that going back in time to listen to singles. So how does the band balance the idea of capturing the modern listener with the concept album in a world of singles? What formula do you think is Fauna has captured to the attention of teenager or young metalheads rockers?
Yeah, I see your point. I mean, in the ideal world, everyone would sit down, put on some headphones, and listen to the whole album in one go. And that's usually how we would write music. And progressive music tends to lean towards that approach anyway. And we try to balance that by writing an album that makes sense as a whole, but it also has standalone tracks that also make sense on their own. So that's the ultimate aim. So if you listen to the album, there's a lot of tunes that work on their own, like songs like Alphabet of Me works as a standalone single. And then we had Taurus as well. But in the context of the album, they also work, I feel. It feels like part of a bigger journey. So that's something we're always trying to balance. And we haven't always done that in the past. Some albums, we've had songs that bleed into each other and almost feel like one long piece of music. You know, albums like Visions is a good example of that. But as we've progressed as a band and as writers, we're always trying to write songs that stand alone on their own. Because, like you say, there's a whole culture now of people adding songs to playlists. They might not necessarily want to listen to the whole album. They might just say, I like this tune from this band, but I also like that song from this band. I'm going to create my own playlist. And it's almost like they're creating their own album based around the songs that they like. So we need to be aware of that as well as trying to please the fans that want to listen to the whole album as a whole. But it's interesting because the industry and the way people consume and digest music is always in a state of flux, and it's always changing. So we're always trying to keep our finger on the pulse with these things, but you know, essentially we just want to write music that appeals to us and that, you know, we want to play live.
Yes. Other aspect very different from the old albums is that this new album has a very colorful cover art, because if you compare with the Vector and Virus, red and yellow, and Affinity even is more green. But this album has a lot of textures into the cover art, and especially the elephant in the picture, the monkey, the hummingbird. This is there's a lot of things, a lot of ideas into there. So who came with the idea to put a lot of stuff into this new cover art? And obviously the Fauna name is a huge name to just put in a cover, does?
Yeah. So firstly, we worked with a guy called Dan Goldsworthy, who lives in the UK, up in the north in Scotland. And he's just a really talented guy, full of really cool ideas. And it's the first time we've worked with him. And it turns out he's also a huge Haken fan. He's been listening to us for years, which definitely helped that process. And he was like fully on board to like dive headfirst into the concept. And like you mentioned, the Fauna concept is very broad and expansive, and there's so many different facets to it, so many colors and moods and characters to it. So we felt that the music needs to reflect this because it's very eclectic and diverse and broad, and we felt the artwork also needs to reflect the music because arguably this is our most diverse album. And in the past we've like generally gone for kind of minimalistic looking covers, but we felt with this one it'd be good to like really go to town with the artwork. And I feel like Dan's really almost like created a piece of work that feels like an extension to what we did in the music, and it's a real joy to work with him. And it's mad, like he would give us a piece of artwork for each song, and we're like, well, that could be the album cover because it's so good. So like every piece he did, he put so much passion and dedication into it that, you know, it really shows in the full package. So yeah, he's a great guy and it's a real pleasure.
Okay, each single has a cover art. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's that aspect. So another detail of this new album is that it is the first of the band without Diego Tejeda on keyboards. So how do you take the Diego's departures for this album? And was this album composed or written by him, perhaps some aspects, or was it all with Peter Jones?
Yeah, so Diego decided to leave to pursue his own career, and we're like more than happy with that, and we wish him the best of luck with his new career. But this album was definitely a fresh start for us, and it was the first album with Pete Jones, and he was fully involved during the whole process, and he really breathed a new life into the process. He had a lot of energy, a lot of ideas, and that's really kind of broadened our sound and like pushed us into some new areas. Pete is he had a very strong influence in the electronic world as well as his jazz chops as well. So he really brought that to the table. And there's kind of these really cool electronic intricacies that we've never really had in our music before, which is a really new, interesting dimension to the music, which I'm very excited about pursuing into the future. But yeah, it's been a great process working with Pete, and I can't wait to continue doing that in the future.
Yes, because Peter was in the first year of the band, on 2007 2008. So he's returning to the band now, a fully musician. Yeah.
Yeah, he was in the band way back in 2007,
Yes.
2008 when we worked on some demos before Aquarius, and we stayed in contact over the years and would regularly meet, hang out, and we even formed another band together called Nova Collective with the bass player from Between You Buried and Me, which is more of a jazz fusion influenced band. So we stayed in touch musically as well as socially. So when Diego left, it was a no-brainer. He was like the perfect guy for the job, really. So we asked him, and he was more than up for doing it. And I feel like it's been a great process. Yeah.
Okay, with this aspect of Diego retires, because I saw in his social media that he's retired for to play with Devin Towns and with a lot of well-known bands in the world. So with the expectation of Ross Jennings playing with Novena and has a lot of feature in a lot of bands. Also, Charles Griffiths has his own project, Charlie Griffiths Band, and also plays in a future band. So perhaps do you still afraid for some of these kind of people are, well, and sometimes are left the band and bring new music and bring new musicians, or do you talk about this aspect to stay with the band and not paying attention to their own projects?
Well, I feel like it's important for us to explore other projects, because I've got the Nova Collective, I've got my own solo albums as well that I've released, and Charlie's got his solo album, Ross has got his solo album. I feel like that's an important creative outlet outside of Haken for us to explore the music that is speaking directly to us personally. And then when we meet together in Haken, it's a fully collaborative experience where we can all share our ideas. And the ideas that come out of those sessions are going to be naturally different from the stuff we write on our own, because it's a collective vision. So I feel like it's important for us to scratch that itch personally. But it definitely doesn't hinder the process that we go through in Haken. Haken is always going to be our main project, and it's our bread and butter. It's what we do. And for me, it's been, like the heart and soul of what I do as a musician since I was 16. Like, we came up with a name way back in our teens, and it's been like a lifelong mission for me to build this band. So it'll always be my main inspiration, my main force in my career. But the side projects we do is just a bit of fun on the side, really.
Okay. Oh, this aspect it's like a rule many times that when a musician retires for any band in the world, I spoke with a lot of bands, most musicians lose the touch, or lose the contact with him or with her, etc. So because it's a circle have been broken, or something wouldn't have been the same, because it's no longer more in the band, no longer hanging out, etc. I think it's a rule. I don't know. So in addition, of the Diego, so Diego was in the band for 13 years with you. So do you still have communicate with him, What do you think of Haken's new album here?
We wish him the best of luck in his career. That's all I can say, really. I mean, he decided he wanted to pursue his own projects, and we're more than happy to support that. And we're just going to continue doing what we do. And yeah, that's all I want to say, really.
Okay, okay. Well, now talking about this new tour in Latin America, we will start by asking, what are your beloved memories or your best anecdotes that you have in Haken tour in 2018? I was there I was there in Peru at that time in 2018. So, and according to your perspective, perhaps do you hear where the myths and legends fulfill that the fans for this part of the world are most passionate? Because I think before you did your first tour, always you heard about the Latin people are very passionate, very savage, etc. And this aspect will fulfill when you first tour.
Yeah, I mean, we played in South America for the first time in Haken. Yeah, like you say, in 2018, and it was a real shock to us because we weren't expecting much of a reaction because we never played there, so we didn't know we built much of a crowd there. But some of those shows were some of the best we played in terms of the passion and the energy that the crowd gave us, and you can like really feel the energy in the room. And it started off actually when we played with Mike Portnoy and the Shattered Fortress run. We were playing with him as his support band essentially, and we were playing the 12-step suite that he'd helped write with Dream Theater, and also a bunch of other favorite tunes. So for us, it was a real experience, and we got to share that love of the music with all the fans there. So then shortly afterwards, we returned with Haken, and we were received extremely warmly. So I can't wait to get back over there and experience that passion once again. And it's not long now. It's in October, so only a few months away. Can't wait to get back over there.
So a common question. So did you think that that a tour on this side of the world was going to be repeated with the same feeling and the same expectation that you got for the first time? Because because it is some difficult for some bands tour again in this part of the world for the economic aspect. Now the world was crazy 3 years ago, the pandemic, war, economic, etc., etc. Do you think that a tour like this will happen again in the future when you think about to return in 2018?
Well, it's hard to tell because we've like you say, the world's a different place now. There's been an economic crisis in all parts of the world. So we don't know. We've been on like 2 or 3 tours since COVID, and there's definitely a change. There's fuel prices that have gone up. People have bigger house bills to pay. So, you know, they might not necessarily be able to afford to come to a concert. But all we can do is come to these new places and play our shows and hope that people want to come and see live music. I feel like in South America and Latin America, it's been a good long time now. It's been 5 years since we were last there, so it's before COVID, and we've released 3 out. So it was on the Vector album we toured there.
Yeah.
So we've done Virus and Fauna since then. So there's 2 albums of new music that we haven't played there. So I'm hoping that the fans are still hungry for us to play over there, but we'll have to wait and see in October. But I'm sure, you know, judging from the ticket sales so far, it's going to look like a really, really fun time.
Okay. Well, speaking of this new tour in Latin America, what are your expectations of this tour after 5 years? You told me. So, and how will your set list be formed to this new tour? Because Virus was released in 2020, did not have a good promotion due to the pandemic and this kind of stuff, and now it has two albums to promote itself. So do you feel comfortable because sometimes some musicians doesn't feel comfortable when they play all songs, or do you feel some comfortable to playing songs from the past album? I say because I said many musicians don't like 2 albums, they more focus on the latest.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for us to play the old songs as well, because a lot of the fans that come and see us have been with us for years, and those songs are special to them. And they're also special to us because they're the songs that really got us to where we are. And, you know, without fans coming to see us, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. So we have to pay homage to that. But like you say, we're basically 2 new albums. We need to play. We're kind of promoting those 2 albums, and Virus never really got a tour. So like you say, we released it in COVID. We never got the full promotion and touring cycle that it deserved. So on these last couple of tours that we've done, we've been trying to make it fairly Virus and Fauna heavy, but with a bunch of old tunes scattered in there as well. So I imagine that we're going to carry on that same approach when we come to South America. It's going to be a nice long set for sure. And we're going to pack it with some of the favorites that we've done over the years, but also some of the favorites from Fauna and Virus. On the last tour, well, actually the tour we're doing right now, so I'm on tour right now. I'm in Orlando right now. On this tour, we've crammed the set list with like a bunch of epics. So there's like 4 or 5 songs that are over 10 minutes. So I know that in South America, Latin America, you guys love your long songs. So I imagine we'll probably cram a few of those into that set as well.
Okay, that's it. Speaking of the direction that the metal side has taken in the war, I see that now there are many bands and extreme metal are inclined to make progressive metal. No? Do you think into this aspect, do you think that over the years, the classic styles within metal disappears and everything will be progressive death metal, progressive thrash metal, progressive extreme metal? As you can see, progressive technical a lot with extreme metal. So, and do you think the progressive, like we know, metal progressive like Sabotage, Dim Theater, etc., and Haken, more well-known names, can withstand all these changes without mixtures without leaving the metal concept?
Yeah, I guess the word progressive is such a broad term. It can encompass lots of different things, and I guess that's why it's easy to pigeonhole bands in a progressive world. So I like the term progressive because I think it means that you're pushing yourself into new areas. So that's how I perceive the word progressive. Like if you listen to our music, there is metal in there. That's definitely an element to it. But there's also kind of jazz influences. There's like indie rock, and that's how I see progressive. Rather than just seeing it as a progressive metal band, I'll see us as a progressive band. You know, we try to incorporate electronic stuff like indie, metal, jazz, blues, whatever. So I think it's important for us to just be a progressive band, but also we're just a band because there's so many different subcategories and subgenres and things that you can get lost in that kind of stuff. And you almost feel like you need to kind of cater to a certain sound based on your category. So we try not to think too much about these kind of things. We'll just kind of write music, and then if people want to pigeonhole us, that's up to them to do. But we're just a band that wants to write music that relates to us.
Okay. Well, Haken, for me or for many people, it's a band that doesn't get complicated with the difficult to understand the music, or with the music, or if we compare with the calisthenic musicians that they got the YouTube now, that are with a school with a full of skills to play guitar, bass, drums. As you can see, a lot of these kind of musicians appears in YouTube, playing more faster, more technical, more this, a lot of them. So what do you think of these musicians who abuse the technicals of acceleration with the progressive or technical metal? What is your vision of the progressive metal and a new band when you hear in festivals, tours?
Well, firstly, whenever I open Instagram or YouTube, I get a bit depressed by all the amount of insanely great guitarists there are that are just so proficient at their instruments that it just blows my mind. So I have to tip my hat to those guys for getting to that level of proficiency. I mean, it's not easy. But for us, I mean, we like to kind of sometimes sprinkle a bit of that into our music, but first and foremost, I feel like the song is the most important thing. We will focus mainly on like strong lines in the chorus, memorable verses. And then in the kind of instrumental passages in the middle, we might kind of litter it with some more technical side of things, but we try not to bombard the listener with too much of that. Try to keep it broad. But there are some bands which are like very technical throughout the whole song, and that kind of works for that kind of music, I feel. But you know, to get to that point, it's not easy. So I have to, you know, pay respect to those guys, and I don't have any issues with it really. But it's just mad the amount of great players there are that are unrecognized, and they'll be stuck in their bedrooms playing, but no one will know who they are. So I feel like it's important to be very proficient at your job if that's what you want, but also you need to also pay attention to playing in a band and playing music and getting out there if you want to be exposed to the world. So I think creating that balance is it's important.
Okay. Before we finish, and talking about other topics, as I said in the first questions, during the restrictions due to the pandemic, so we were discussing the options that the bands were using to keep in touch with the fans, like streaming shows. Now that everything backs to the normal, we have real concerts, tours, a lot of things happen again. So, but recently, artificial intelligence or AI is becoming more and more accessible to people, and the discussion is about the impact in different aspects of our lives. So, including art and music. So, what is your opinion? What is your perspective about this issue? Do you see yourself using it to make a cover art, for example, or perhaps even asking an AI to compose something for you?
It's a scary idea. I mean, I'm a big fan of the TV show Black Mirror by Charlie Brooker. He's like a British comedian, but he wrote this series called Black Mirror on Netflix, and it's all about kind of the near future and based on a bunch of ideas that could quite possibly be a reality, and it's quite scary. And I guess AI would fall into that category. Stuff like ChatGPT. You know, people could be writing speeches, news broadcasts using this AI, and it's almost going to create, well, like the lack of a need for people. And I feel like music, the main thing about music is that emotional connection that is, I guess, currently quite tricky to recreate with technology. But if we ever get to the point where we can create that emotional impact and connectivity through AI, that's a scary thought, because then the next step will be getting robots to play music for us, and that's already happened. But I mean, to get a robot to write the music and then play the music as well, we will become obsolete as humans and will be not needed anymore. But maybe that would make our lives easier, you know. If we could write the music and get a robot to play it for us on tour, we could stay at home and get paid. So I don't know, but it's a scary idea that AI could take over. But I'd like to believe that music might be one of those things that stays a very human thing.
Oh, yes. So, well, Richard, the sad times arrived at this interview. I hope you enjoyed this one like me. You're a terrific guy. Love your band since the beginning to now. As I said, I saw you in 2018. It's a shame that they know you will present here in Peru, but I will try to travel to Colombia to see you. That's why the website is based in 2 countries. So congratulations for this new album. It's an amazing one. And perhaps do you want to add something to your Latin American fans and Metalero followers?
Well, thank you for listening over the years. We know you guys have got a lot of passion, and we can't wait to see you over in Latin America when we come in October, and we'll be dotted all around, and we will be playing in Peru as well. So I hope you can come and see us and enjoy the show if you do.